Hey guys, I'm back and I'm doing a follow-up I promised you guys back in September. So in Gear Pack mission, I can't remember, but I'm going to show you some of it. We saw this Ontario, they call this it's a field knife. They don't call it a machete. Some model 5070. This particular one, okay, so let's start over. Yes, I'm still back. Yes, this is still the Ontario. Yes, we're still doing a follow-up. The initial clips that I did, I messed up something up with the card, so there was like a card error. So I had initially showed you this before I started doing some testing with it. You're seeing the results of after some testing with it. Some carbon scoring on these droids. Anyway, so there was none of this when I did the first initial clips, but this goes to show you how little it takes to mark up this totally unprotected carbon blade. Anyway, this is the Ontario Model 5070. It is, they call it a field knife, not a machete. So we'll get that out of the way. It's an interesting design. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to tell you about it. I'm also going to play you a little bit of the unboxing from the original Gear Pack. It's only 3 minutes long, but I think it sets the stage a little bit for this. If you haven't seen, that way you don't have to go even look for a separate video or anything like that. Like I said, it's 3 minutes long. Let me show you the original unboxing when we got this in September so you kind of see what we're dealing with. Let's move on to the Basic Plus, and we have an Ontario Knife Company, which is cool because Ontario is going out of business. Ontario is closing its doors. Ontario Knife Company Old Hickory Field Knife, which is this. I'm not commenting on the knife. $39.99 for the Basic Plus box. So everything you get plus the Old Hickory. But the Old Hickory at $39, even at $28.98, that's what they say this costs. Couldn't come with a sheath, even a piece of plastic. Oops, piece of leather. See, that's why it should come with a sheath. It's very thin, and I'm going to assume this is some kind of like 1095 or whatever. It's getting fingerprints on it like right there already, but see how they're darker? That's carbon steel for you. And I hope I've not just burned acidy human fingerprints into this thing. But you know, it also didn't come wrapped in any kind of oil. So let's see. For all I know, this is some kind of cheap ass steel. It's Ontario, so I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. But usually what happens is an Ontario knife comes in its little paper thing. It says here, made in USA. It says right there, made in USA. And then, you know, inside a box, it comes in this paper thing, and then it also has a sheath involved that I can feel. Listen. Hear that? A little bit of a wire edge, a little bit of a burr on there, so I don't know how sharp this is going to be. We'll have to test this out outside as well. So we'll figure that out. Where is that roll of webbing that I am sacrificing to the gods of sharpness? You guys really have no idea how cluttery my little area here is. We'll just do this real quick right now, okay? Oi! Listen to this, if you can hear it, okay, as I cut. Oi! Okay, I hit the tripod. We're gonna try it one more time. Just listen to the roughness in the sound when it cuts. I hope you heard it. This edge needs some help. It needs some help. I'm probably not gonna take this outside right now, because if you heard that, this edge, well, I feel has the potential. Oh my God, yeah, right there. Listen, I'm gonna put this, it's just running my finger along the bevel there. Well, I feel like this knife has the potential to become very sharp. I feel like we need to work on it a little bit, so we will do, I promise, I'm gonna use it on the stuff, you know, yeah, I could turn the volume off, and I probably should. I'm gonna do a follow-up on this, because I owe you some follow-ups on some other stuff, so I'm gonna work on the edge a little bit. I'm gonna see if I can source a sheath for it. We'll have some more content related to this. I like it though in terms of its got a decent balance. It's a little thin handled, but well done. No hot spots at all. Nice wide, nice, long handle shape for all sorts of hands. It's a no frills. It really is a no frills. So, all right. So it came out of the box. It was not finished very well, honestly. But I said we were going to take a look at it because there were some things I liked about it. I got a chance to sit down and sort of work on it. And like I said in a previous thing, I want to get more away from just unboxings and get back to actually outside and doing stuff. So this is the sharpening stone that comes from another Ontario knife. This came from the my .499 Army Air Force survival knife. This is the sharpening stone that comes inside the pouch. It's a very fine stone, as you can see. So I decided I was going to work on the edge with this. And I did it all by hand. No water, no oil or anything on it. All I did was, again, hand, just eyeballing the angle, just some draw strokes back and forth on it. No stropping or anything like that. And I did it in my spare time over the last few days while I was watching some videos, watching a movie or two. So I can't tell you exactly how long I did it, but I did it for a little bit. Just to give you an idea of where we're at, it will now cut paper. It is still not, I would not at all qualify this as razor sharp, but it's a much better edge than we had on it originally when it came out of the box. I have the octopus here so we can take a look and just get some cord. What have I been working with lately? I don't even know. All right, so the first running end I grab, which is this one, which I don't want to use because I like it. There's one that I was, I think it is. There's one that's chopped up. I can't find it. All right, whether I like it or not, we're using this one. So let's see how the slice goes. Not bad. It's actually a pretty clean cut. Let's do a little bit of a pull through, which is going to be a little challenge because on a blade this length, depending, it's all with the fulcrum point and the lever of it, it's going to be much harder to get a pull through nice and easy and clean here than it is down here. So I'll try to aim for the middle of the blade just so that we can take a look. And I'm still going to tell you all about the specs and everything because I really didn't do that in the last video. So let's see. I'm going to aim down. Yeah, and see, that's not easy. If I move it down here, it's still not easy. Okay. So blade still leaves a lot to be desired. And again, I didn't work on it all that much. I really didn't. So what we have here is an 11-inch blade made of 1095 carbon steel. I can't remember what these handles, what these scales are made of, but I will put it in text. They are pinned. As I was using it, there was a little movement. It seems like they've cured themselves of that. It is completely unprotected carbon steel. There is no coating on it whatsoever at all. These holes are really interesting. There is an upcoming, or it's already come and gone version of this knife that has a riveted dig spike on the end of it. And that's what these holes are for. They're not like a butcher's knife with a hole to hang in or anything like that. And I think that's the model 5020. You can go look. Now, this knife itself is discontinued, but you can still find it online, available at a couple places. One recently sold on eBay for not a whole lot of money. Off the top of my head, I think I'm going to throw a picture in there. I think it was 23 and some change. It's still available online at a couple places in the $30, $40 range. It is what it is. The first thing I tested this for, and now in the original intro I filmed, I couldn't tell you this because I hadn't done it yet, but being that it is a knife, and some of the comments people had before was that it would remind them of a big kitchen knife. So I did some food prep tasks with it. And I had cut up some onions and some mushrooms in preparation for making burgers. And one of the things is onions are very, very acidic and very sulfury. And you'll see, I'll talk a little bit about surface rust on the blade when you see that clip, because I did record it. But this is afterwards, and I had washed the blade afterwards and everything, chopping those onions. But look at the, I can't think of the word right now, but the result of that on the blade. I know it's hard with the light right here, but this is the result. This is what's left on the blade after cutting through those onions. And then not only I sliced them, but then I did some dicing, which was not the easiest thing in the world with this blade. So looking at it as maybe sort of a camp kitchen knife. And that's not the only food prep test I want to do with it, but that's what I had available at the time. So right away, and also because it's such a thin blade, and because you can see the direct grind lines in it, this blade has absolutely no protection against any staining at all, against anything eating into the carbon. And there is a little bit of surface rust, which came, well, I'll explain that in the clip. So we'll get to that as we do the testing. So the weight and balance on it, not too bad. It's really not too bad. It's a very lightweight knife because, of course, look how thin it is. Would we use it as a machete? Probably not. I mean, probably not. It's going to be as a, I don't know. We're going to, I don't even know what I'd really classify this as. But we're going to take it outside. We're going to do some more testing with it. We're going to do some stuff that you would not normally do with a blade this thin. We're going to process some wood normally. We are going to do some chopping with it. If the blade breaks, the blade breaks. I'm undecided if we're going to do batoning, because batoning is knife abuse anyway, but we'll see. But the whole thing, why we didn't do anything with it originally, is because the edge came in such a poor state. So using just a simple fine stone and nothing else, with just, eyeball approximated angles, we were able to put a decent edge on it. And so that's pretty good that you're able to do that with this steel, with its heat treat and everything. Might raise questions as to how well it will retain that edge if it was so easy to get the edge into shape. But then again, 1095 is a great steel because it is a tough steel. It is an edge retaining steel. It is a fairly easy to maintain steel. And my big thing is this is a very thin piece of 1095. So I don't know how much it'll hold up to. So let's go about our other tests and having fun with it. And like I said, if it breaks, it breaks, and that'll be the end of it. I'm not expecting a whole lot out of this thing. But let's go. Some people have commented, it looks like a big old kitchen knife. So I'm gonna do some kitchen shit with it. I'm making burgers tonight. And if you want to know the secret, it's 93% lean beef, it's meatloaf mix, it's pork in the right proportions. And then other stuff, such as a sweet Vidalia onion and some of the other things that we're going to put in it. But anyway, so I had washed this just before running to the store, and I spent less than an hour in the store. Because I had sharpened it up. I wanted to make sure it was nice and clean. So I washed it. I patted it down. There might have been a couple drops of water. I left it on the counter while I ran to the store. I really was not at the store for more than an hour. Do you see the surface rust that is already taking hold on this thing? It was not there prior to that, I swear. Now, this is not we're not going to get tetanus in the food or anything. This is not going to come off. I'd have to work to get that off. And it wouldn't be too hard, but I mean, it's not a threat to the food. It's not. I'm just pointing it out. So it's a motorcycle in the background. Not a big fan of those kinds of bikes. Very loud. And I just personally don't like to listen to them. That's all. That's me. No problem with the people that ride them. I just don't like to listen to them. In fact, bikers can be some of the coolest people you know. There's a biker group. You might call them a gang. I'm not going to call them a gang, but it's a group. And they volunteer to go protect children who have to testify against people who have, we'll say, offended against them, to make them feel safe and secure. And they will go and they'll like sit outside the kid's house. They'll hold the kid's hand, escort them into court, and make sure that they never feel intimidated and feel safe and secure, through the process of testifying against scumbag pedos. I think that's really cool that they do that. And when you've got a bunch of big burly bikers in your corner, what are you possibly afraid of? Nothing. So that's really awesome. I respect those guys a lot. And I know because someone on Sam's side of the family is actually a member of that group. So anyway, sorry, just came up as I'm peeling the onion. And I'm not doing it very well. See, normally I'd use the tip of a knife to get in under there. Just wasn't sure how this would work. Now, remember, as I said before, I didn't do this to like a razor's edge because it's not supposed to be. It's a machete type knife. It's not a, it's not a chef's knife. I didn't want to make it unfair. We could have probably really given this a lot more attention and made this razor sharp, but that's not what this kind of edge is for. And I'm wondering, with the carbon content in the blade and what we're seeing already, how is this? Onions have a lot of sulfur in them. I'm wondering how it's going to affect the blade. In terms of just cutting, it's not too bad. I need this one cut a little bit thin because I got to dice it up, because these slices, that's a little thicker than I wanted. I'm not happy with the thickness of the blade, and it really, these pieces have to go into the burger. Now, it's just flat. Again, with a chef knife, I like to be able to rock it as I'm doing the dice. So that's not bad. But it's with the handle like this, it hits the ground. With the chef knife, you have what I'll call an elevated handle, to where you can really get the whole blade on the ground. And I know that I'm missing the tail end of this onion as and I can cut it, but I'm not going to be able to do a real dice. So when some people said, it kind of looks like a big kitchen knife, yeah, you can do some slicing. I have a plastic bag, I'm moving it here too off screen, but you can't do, maybe you can. It doesn't feel natural. Oh, I left a little skin in. It doesn't feel the most natural, but I guess you can do it. It doesn't have the sharpened edge that I'd like to do this kind of work, but it's doing it. So if we were out somewhere and we were talking food prep, I mean, I need this chopped a lot thinner than this. A lot smaller, we'll say. I need it diced really small. I don't want people taking big bites of onion in the meat. You just want that flavor in the meat. Okay, so that's just one example. I'm not even going to attempt the tomato with this for reasons. Mushroom. Well, the mushroom it cuts very easily without tearing through it. It almost skipped off the wet mushroom surface into my finger. That's not great. But if we're gonna saute some mushrooms, now some people like to just take, oops, sorry, kick the camera. Some people like to just take the caps off and just do caps. I leave stems on. I feel like it looks more like a mushroom that way. But, however, if you were just gonna do caps only, you can still, since it is such a long blade, there's no real good way to choke up on it. I don't feel like you get the control as you would over as a conventional kitchen knife, but there. So we've done some kitchen knife shit. Yes, you can do some kitchen knife shit, and I'm gonna have to go over this again a few times to get it really diced the way I want it, but it's not too bad. It's not great. We'll move on to some other stuff with it, after dinner, like tomorrow. Well, now, looks like it got a little wet out here since yesterday. Wasn't expecting that. Didn't know that just looking out the window. Gray skies, but anyway, I guess nobody ever died from getting their wood wet. I don't know if that's entirely an accurate statement, but so we're going to continue. Here's a better view of the discoloration from working with the onion. So I'm trying to think, what really can we do with this? It is so thin. So we're going to do some basic wood processing type stuff. Who's flying? This is terrible VFR weather. So one of the things when you're working with this, it's a little hard to get that good leverage because you have such a thin handle. Now you could, maybe, I'm trying to debark is what I'm trying to do. It's just you don't want to get your hand too close, but you also don't have real great control over that forward part up here, because remember we talked yesterday when I was inside about leverage, and this being so thin it flops around on you. So, and again, field knife, that's what they call it, the field knife. What are we gonna like see? And it doesn't even have a big spine to where you can. All right, you can do some small batoning tasks. Into the mud. I don't know if I want to go much bigger than that, because, again, so thin. This is actually just bouncing off. Yeah, I don't even want to keep going. It's so because it's really just totally flat. I mean, it is. Obviously, it does come to a wedge shape, but we'll see what this what's the word? It's wet. Does to the D2, but it's such a flat grind that for outdoor, wood-related tasks, it has no wedge. It has no wedge. So this one was very shallow and a relatively small piece, so it did work. It went, but to actually get in there, something like this, a thicker, heavier piece, it just has no splitting power, not at all. So you'd actually have to, basically you brute force it through the piece, but any other machete or larger knife has that wedge for cutting wood. We can use it as a knife blade, and you see we're getting some very nice, now the wood's wet of course, but nice thin curly cues, which we could use for fire starting. But back to but once again, I keep saying that once again, it's just not comfortable to use because the leverage issues, because the handle issue. If I were to use just the rear portion of the blade kind of back near the ricasso area, it's not that bad, but it's just not that comfortable a knife to do this with. I don't feel like I've got great control over where the blade's going. Sort of notching, sort of not. It kind of works, it kind of doesn't. Yeah, but we can do that fine wood processing. That's working. Other kinds of, it's just too big, wobbly, and so far it's a camp kitchen knife. It's a big camp kitchen knife with no sheath, is what I'm figuring it is. What can we do with this thing? You hear the tingy sound too? I don't like that. It makes me nervous. And I'm feeling the movement on the handle scales again as I do this. So we can get some chopping in. God, it's going to take forever. It's stress on my hand. Yeah. So, as we get just a little bit thicker, we use a little bit more force. With brute force, all things are possible. So it does work like a cleaver, but even a cleaver is a little bit thicker than this and gives you a little bit more wedge power, but it does it. Just so happens we've got some of these old bushes going to the compost pile, so I can use them to test this. I mean, sort of machete-ish, but not a bad chopping, you know, kind of blade. The thinness there works for it, as you're just chopping through vegetation. I'd like to have a lanyard hole if I'm going to use it for that, which I don't think it's intended for anyway, but it does work. It's thin. It makes, that's where the thinness, that's where the thin blade stock comes in handy for you. Low resistance if you're going to chop through some stuff. And you see, it does chop. You guys know how much I love doing this non-scientific at all test. I'm going to get drenched, and so is the camera, because we're way too close. That's not as clean as other ones I've done. Not at all. You can see, look at this, forensic reconstruction. Basically, we came in here, and at this point, I guess, we tore in, but I think, actually, now that I take it back, it was pretty clean. It was a pretty clean cut. Except that I lied. Okay, I'm taking it back. I'm seeing, see how the can folds? So it actually folded some of the aluminum, and once it got in the can, then it cut. But a lot of the other things I have done this test on, and believe me, I had a good leverage, good position to give it a good swing, but it actually had to fold the aluminum until it got to the point where it could cut through, because up here is totally clean. Down here we had the fold, and I don't know what the hell this is, but people in the house drink it. It smells good, so yeah, it actually didn't slice through. Disappointing. I just closed the door to start this next clip, and Pete is not sure if he wants to continue staring at meat or stare at the door, because now he's trapped. We'll see where his loyalties lie. I don't know. So, yeah, we're back to food. And I'm going to pretend that this was the plan all along, to, like, stage these events in different order. Like, okay, we had to chop our way through the soda can fence to get to the animal to process our meat from the supermarket. Anyway, so I just have a regular cut of meat, and I'm not using anything expensive, because have you seen the price of meat these days? No, anyway, normally I buy the good stuff, and it makes everybody around me nuts, and they're like, why are you spending $30 on a steak? And I'm like, because wait till you taste the steak. But we just have some top round, which you can do wonderful things with if you know how to season and cook, but whatever. Well, that's a pleasant sign that it didn't like rip and tear. It just actually nicely cut the plastic. But no, I picked this cut of meat specifically because it's got light marbling. It's a nice cut of meat in general. Again, not the fanciest, but if we want to cut, we want to see how this does. The fibers in top round are, if you're not using a good sharp knife, it's going to drag. It's going to drag through the meat. It's not going to cut evenly, and it'll let you know. And I know this from doing jerky. This is a great cut of meat to do jerky from. Again, not the highest end, but so let's do. What if you are processing game and stuff out in the wilderness with this thing? So we'll start with just the tip. And it did kind of catch on the bottom a little bit. Let's try it again. Yeah, caught a little bit on the fat. That, on the other hand, using the full belly, very nice clean cut through the meat. And like I said, so some of you might know what I'm talking about, where it tears, it pulls, it tears apart the fibers and pulls on it. Yeah, oh, you see this? Yes, come here, my little 8-pound killing machine. You want to come sniff? I welcome you. I'll move stuff out of the way. But some people that do a lot of cooking with meat know what I'm talking about, where fibers tear if you're not using a nice sharp edge. And you know, when I did a lot of food processing type tests and everything, cutting a decent, not a great, but a decent cut of meat is one of the things I used to do, just to test how finely done that edge is. And I thought this would be a good point because, you know, we started pretty simple. We did a little bit of food. There he goes. No, he'd rather get out of the room. With a still meaty blade, let's go to the real decider of edge retention, short of rubbing on a brick. Let's do some cardboard. You know what? I wonder. Hold on. Doesn't feel as rough as your standard 90-degree edge, but maybe. We got some little tiny sparks, and then they stopped. Got like one spark. You know what? It's actually. Can you see? It's actually folding the edge over there. It's is it? No, it's not folding the edge. It's just picking up huge amounts of material from the ferro rod is what it's doing. Okay, so you're not going to be sparking with this. Just thought I'd try. So anyway, let's start cutting. See what happens. All right, that was a lot of cutting, and it was, by the end of it, very taxing on the hand, very uncomfortable to hold. But then again, maybe I'm just old. However, it didn't feel rough or anything like that going through. It felt like the blade took the cardboard and cut it relatively easily and quickly. I can feel some kind of tape residue on the bevel here that I will I'll just wash off with some Windex, so that as we do a follow-up paper and cord test after this, it's not affected by having this tape residue on the blade, because that would be unfair to judge it on that. So I'll do it over here, whatever. I'm making a new mat anyway. So let's see. Make sure we get that nice and clean. All right, now we haven't done, this is not, I'm gonna call this a field test, not a hard use test. We're not trying to, I think the best hard use test I ever did, like really hard use, was when the Benchmade 810 and the 275 came out way back when. And if you're interested in seeing how that all worked, I'll put a a thing up here. That was a whole series, and boy did we torture those knives. And then I redid them, remodeled them, and gave them away. Let's go to the paper and see. Ooh. So we got to test all portions of the blade here because it's pretty long. So the rear portion still feels like it's holding that bevel pretty well. In the mid area there, though, it's definitely has not held the edge as well. And in the forward portion feels like it's still pretty decent. That would make sense because as I was doing most of the chopping stuff, of course, just by nature, you know, what do they teach you in the Army at BRM? Center mass. So, you know, I was chopping with the center part of the blade for most of that when I was doing notching, or the brief, very brief though, I mean very brief, I was doing the chopping on the wooden stuff. I was always trying, you know, whether you aim for it or by nature, you're probably in the center part of the blade. Now, that's not a good, yeah, that's where it catches up right there. That's not a good excuse though, because we didn't do that much. We really didn't do that much. Properly heat treated 1095 should hold an edge longer than that. However, what happened was, we've got a caveat that this is an incredibly thin blade with an incredibly thin edge. So it is going to roll, deform, not have the physical material to hold its edge longer. Now, you might make the argument that, well, a bevel's a bevel, and if you were to hone it down to the same degree, regardless, it should even out. And I get that, but what you also have to take into account is the mass of the material behind that edge to absorb and dissipate all that kind of shock. And that's a metallurgy thing. So when you have a wider blade, let's just use the cardboard for an example. Let's say we had a wider, hold on, I'm physically unable to do simple tasks right now. If we had a wider blade stock, when I was chopping, and believe me, I'm not trying to make excuses for this edge, but when I was chopping and we had a wider blade stock, that energy would be transferred and dissipated through all this extra material, which would take the stress off that fine bevel cutting edge through the entire length here. When you have a blade stock that is this thin, that energy, that kinetic transfer just doesn't have anywhere to go. Now, that's not an excuse for this knife. That's a failure in design on this knife because they did not design this blade with anywhere for that kind of energy to go. So then again, so now down the what if pathway, is it even supposed to be used for that? Probably not. It's probably not the intended use for this kind of tool. What this is probably meant for with this shape is to be cleaving through animal tissue, foodstuffs, lightweight material. It's probably never intended to be processing wood in that manner. We showed that it could be used to process wood for fire, maybe some very light work, but not in the manner that we tested it. But we tested it to see what it was good for and what it was not for. Let's do some cord real quick. We'll slice first starting at the end by the ricasso. Piece of cake, clean cut. Let's do midsection right about here. Well, you saw the result of that. And now let's do forward edge area. Again, nice and easy. So that kind of reflects where the paper was going on that test. I'm not going to do a pull through. But these are nice. So that's the end result. Ontario is not known, well, I should say, to some people is not known for bad steel. I know some people have had very bad experiences with Ontario, and there was a point in history where Ontario did great quality, and then somewhere in the middle, they just, I don't know, they let it slip, and then they came back with good quality. And then they're out of business. I think that there was that point where, the thing is, once you get a business that has a bad reputation, it's so hard to come back from it. Ontario has a history of great quality, and then they let it go. I personally have a history of good quality, even great quality, using Ontario products. I don't know where this design was going. Maybe there's a history to this shape and this design that I'm not aware of, and I know that there's really smart people in the comments that will fill us in. But outside of maybe a butcher shop or something, I don't know what you do with this. But I'm glad we followed up on the promise to follow up and really see how it goes. Now, this was a lighter test than some of the other ones we've done. It was kind of fun to do, but it really kind of gives you an idea. You can extrapolate the amount of work we did to how the edge held up. Remember the pitiful condition the edge came in, and it took some work just to get it into a usable condition. I still have no sheath for it, have seen no sheath for it. So you'd either have to just be willing to, wrap it in cardboard and tape to transport it, or make one yourself, which for a field knife is not ideal. You want it to come with a transport system. So overall, probably, not something I would buy on my own. If it didn't come in the box, not something I would spend my own money on. Even at the fairly inexpensive prices you can find it around for today. But there we go. So what'd you guys think of this? I would love to know if there are particular little tests we did with it that you liked, things that you didn't like, other things you'd like to see done in few, because we're circling back to a lot of different items to follow up on and test. What are other things you'd like seen done with blades that I didn't do? I know somebody had mentioned another one that you'd like to see some inner tube cutting, and I can throw that in there. We have old bike inner tubes that need to be cut. That's fine. But what other things would you guys like to see done in some more blade testing? So if this was entertaining, maybe somewhat educational, or you just enjoyed it and you're not already subbed, why not? Go ahead, click the button. That would be cool of you. Throw a like in there. Comment, tell me what you thought. But overall, remember that you guys are all absolutely awesome, and I appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be back again real soon.